And now Modi ministers laud India-US trade deal. Amit Shah says paving way for stronger trade ties with this deal. Trade deal will benefit both the nations. Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav says India-US natural allies and that India and US have complementary strengths. And he also says that trade pact is a win-win deal and citizens will benefit from this trade deal. India and US can co-create tech for world. So these are the reactions from the ministers. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has hailed the India-US trade deal, and he has said that it paves way for stronger trade ties and that this trade deal will benefit both the nations. In fact, Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav has also lauded this trade deal, saying that India and US are natural allies and that they have complementary strengths and that trade pact is a win-win deal and the citizens will eventually benefit from this. So these are the reactions from the ministers who are lauding the India-US trade deal. Remember, the big announcement was made by US President Donald Trump himself. The tariffs have now been lowered from 50% to 18%, which is also the lowest among the neighboring countries. If you talk about Pakistan, the tariffs stand at 19%. China, it stands at 34%. Bangladesh, it stands at 20%. But India, the tariffs are now at 18%. So let us also once again take a look at how India made Donald Trump finally make this big announcement and made Trump blink and bow first. So Prime Minister Modi did not rush to take Donald Trump's call. There was hard-nosed diplomacy over hurried deal. So the deal was not hurried and India took its own time to finalize this deal. India kept bilateral channels quietly active. So remember, the trade deal talks were on since months. The talks were ongoing and there was no rush to finalize the deal. India made sure that its conditions are heard by the United States, and this is what eventually led to the announcement by Donald Trump and the lowering of tariffs from 50% to 18%. And we're now being joined by author Michael Kugelman on the broadcast. Mr. Kugelman, the big announcement, the announcement that was awaited has finally been made by US President Donald Trump. The tariffs have been lowered on India from being one of the nations that had the highest tariffs to becoming one of the nations that has the lowest tariffs, from 50% to 18%. How do you look at this development and what do you think are going to be the global implications?
Well, yeah, it's very significant. I mean, as you say, India had been saddled with one of the largest tariffs of any country, and now it's come down to 18%. Not that 18% is low, but it's a lot lower than 50%. And I think it's also significant in that it seemed for quite some time that there might not be a deal. Not too long ago, you had the U.S. Treasury Secretary Lutnick say that India essentially missed out on an opportunity to get a deal when Prime Minister Modi declined to call President Trump last summer. Now, of course, New Delhi has disputed that claim, but the U.S. position had seemed to be fairly skeptical. So for there to now be a deal, suddenly like this, it's a big deal. I think it's clearly a boost for India's economy, and in terms of the broader geopolitical significance, well, I think it's very significant that just several days after India got a major, massive free trade agreement with the EU, it now gets a trade deal with the U.S., which means that it has deals in place with two of its top biggest, most important export markets in the world. And I think that's a big victory, not just economically for India, but also geopolitically.
Mr. Kugelman, which sectors in the United States do you think are set to gain the most because of this trade deal?
Well, I don't want to speculate in the sense that there's still a lot about this deal that we don't know, right? There hasn't been any type of, formal statement about the deal. We don't know exactly what sectors are going to be impacted the most. But, again, as I said before, I mean, the U.S. has been or is one of the top export markets for India. You've got a lot of two-way trade. We've seen U.S.-India trade volume increase significantly over the last 2 decades, even though trade has oftentimes been a tension point in the relationship, not just over the last year, but for several decades. So I think that we're going to see a number of key sectors in the US and also India be impacted in a positive way by this trade deal.
And also, Mr. Kugelman, this announcement comes just days after India signed the mother of all trade deals with the European Union. Do you think that also acted as a catalyst in this India-US trade deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons that one could give for why this deal comes out now. We could talk about them, but certainly I do think there is that possibility that the U.S. saw India conclude this major deal with the EU and might have been concerned about the impact that could have for U.S. Importers and U.S. exporters, given the prospect of India turning its attention to the EU to ramp up trade, with the EU already being such a critical trade partner for India. So perhaps that deal was indeed a catalyst that prompted the administration to decide it need to take the final steps to get to the finish line. Though I definitely don't think that would have been the only factor. I think there are quite a few factors to explain why this deal came when it did.
But there are also some conditions that have been set by Donald Trump. He has also announced that India has to make $500 billion purchase from the United States, and also it has to bring down the oil imports from Russia to zero. How do you look at these conditions?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, neither of those things that Trump said appear to be true to me. I mean, he essentially said that these are things India has committed to do. I cannot imagine the Indian government agreeing to stop importing oil from Russia. I think for economic, diplomatic, and strategic reasons, that would make no sense for India. So this is why, again, I think we have to be careful not to make judgments that are too strong about this deal because there's still a lot that we don't know. I mean, the fact that the U.S. Has said that it will be removing that 25% tariff on India for its Russian oil imports, that's significant. But I think the main reason that's happening is not because India has decided to stop importing Russian oil altogether, but more so because it's agreed to reduce its oil imports from Russia. And of course, India has already reduced its oil imports from Russia since the U.S. introduced new Russia sanctions back in November.
Right. And how do you think this trade deal is going to have an impact on the geopolitics?
Well, I mean, I think that it's perhaps a reminder to the world that given all we could talk about the travails for U.S.-India relations, there's been a lot of stress points in the relationship over the last year. I think that this is sort of really a reminder that the relationship is back, and this is a big boost to the relationship. It's its biggest achievement over this nearly 1 year of tensions, and I think that this could provide momentum for the two sides to be able to come to the table and work out other problems, other tensions, and that could include perhaps getting the Quad back on track. As you know, there's been a long delayed Quad Leaders Summit that's supposed to happen and be hosted by New Delhi. Now that you have this deal that could get relations between the U.S. and India to a point where the Quad would be comfortable continuing its activities, and that could mean that we'll have a Quad meeting and that President Trump might well be able to go to India. And I think that's significant for a number of reasons, but particularly if you look at China and how it might react to that, I don't think Beijing would be too pleased to see the Quad making a comeback if we do see this Quad Leader Summit happen in the coming months.
All right.